Hey everyone, welcome back to SRC Names. This is part 17 of my 20-part series where I go through my entire names list in reverse alphabetical order. So I'll be going through all the C names this time. First of all, I want to go through the new names that I have added since the last video. Only one boy name this time, and that is a name that I'd heard before as a brand name, but I've always loved a name, and I hadn't heard it on a person until now. I just came across this on Nameberry, Sinclair. I think it is really pretty and handsome, and it also reminded me of the various Claire variants, such as Clarence for a boy, and then a lot of the other ones that we will go over later on that I have for my girls list. And then for the girls, I have added a lot of names from Raquel's recent list. There are so many that I just really like, and many of them I hadn't heard before, like this one, Catalea. I think this is just a gorgeous name, and I really like it. And then we have Eulalia. I had heard this name before, but it took me a while to grow on me. Same for Odessa. And then Araminta, I absolutely love. I think it is a really pretty girl's name. And then Vianne could be a great alternative to Diane for those who maybe think that Diane is too dated. Speaking of dated, I was going back and forth between, do I want to add this name to this list or do I think it's too dated? And I ended up adding it. Kimberly. It's gone through my head for many months now, and I finally decided to add it. And so now I'll go through all the C names on my list, starting with the boys. So first we have Cade, which I first heard on a TV show, and from there I just really ended up liking it. This was back when I first started collecting names. Then we have Caden, which I saw on a list, and that was also when I first started collecting names. Now the second spelling of Caden that you see here is actually the 2000th name that I added to my list. So then we have Cayman, which has a really pretty sound to it, and then Cairo, Cal, which is a nice nickname for a lot of these following names, Calbert, Calder, which I think is pretty cool. Caleb was my number one name for a while until Elliot took it over a little over 2 years ago. But it's still in my top 20. I still really like it. Then we have Callahan, which I've always loved. I had only heard it as the last name, but I had recently heard it as a first name for both boys and girls, so you'll see it on my girls list as well. Then we have Callan, two different spellings of that, and then Callum, Callus, which is pretty cool. And then Calvert, Calvin, which despite its meaning, I still really like. It's still, I want to say, number 3 on my names list, my top 20. And since I sort of fell in love with it maybe 2.5 years ago, I have just grown to really like it, I guess, and have it remain on my top 20, let alone my top 5. Then we have Calvet, Camden, which is a really nice name, Camelo, Cameron, Carlisle, Carlos, Carmelo, which is a pretty name, I think. Then we have Carolus, Carol for a boy. I hadn't heard of that, but with double R and a double L, making it a little bit more masculine, at least to me. Then we have Karsten, Carter, Carvins. I had only heard once, and once I added it, I hadn't heard it again, so that took me back to when I first added it. It was the name of an actor on Broadway. Then we have Carrie for a boy, which I had heard of. And then Kaz or Cass. Then Case, Kason, Casey, which I think is a little bit more of a girl's name to me, but I do like it on a boy. Kason with an O. Then Casper, I tend to prefer, in fact, I've always preferred Casper with an E. I just really like that particular spelling, despite the ghost association that maybe some Caspers might get. And then we have Caspian, which I have seen on Nameberry quite a bit and have recently added to my list. I absolutely love Caspian. And then we have Cassius and Cato. Then Caden. This is my preferred spelling of Caden. And then Caetano. I really like this name. I was first introduced to it a couple months ago when I found out that somebody in my class was named Caetano. Then we have Kason again. Then Cedric, Senzo. Chad is the name of one of my great friends. And then I recently found a Chad with 2 Ds, which I thought was pretty cool. Then we have Chadwick, which I had mainly seen as a last name, but I came across it as a first name a while back. And then Charlene or Charlene. And then we have Chase, Kieran or Kieran, I would imagine. Then we have Clancy, which is pretty fun to say. Clarence, this is a name in my top, I think it's still in my top 10, if not my top 20. And then we have, Clarence. When I first discovered Clarence, I thought it was a girl's name, believe it or not, because I was comparing it with Clara and Claire and similar names. And then we have Clark, both with and without the silent E. I tend to prefer it with the silent E. I just really like it. It seems more elegant, shall we say. Then we have Clayton, Clint, Clive, Clyde, Kobe, 2 spellings of that, and then the same 2 spellings for Cody. Then we have Cole, Coleman, which is another name that I had recently seen as a first name rather than a last name. And then Colin, Colton, Connell, Conan, as in Conan Gray, and once I saw his name I added Conan. And then we have Connolly. By the way, one of his songs helped me add Esther to my list. Then we have Connor, Conrad, which I had originally thought when I first saw the name that it was too similar to Comrade, but I have grown to really like the name, Conrad. Then we have Cooper, which again I had only seen as a first name recently. Then Corbin, Corey, one of my first name loves of my top 10 back in the day. And then another more interesting and I guess slightly unusual spelling of Corey. Then we have Corwin, which is really cool. Then Corey again. And then we have Cosby. Colton with a U, which I thought was pretty cool. Then Cullen, Curran, Kurt, and 2 spellings of Curtis, which is again one of those names that I first saw. It was a friend of my brother's, but when I saw it, when I started name collecting, I started to add it and really like it. So now onto the girls, we have, as we transition here, Cabri. I had completely forgotten about this name until I saw it again on my list. I really like the name, and it's really pretty to me, despite it being unusual. Then we have Cadence, Kaylee, one of my many Kayleys. Then Kaylin, Keith is another one that I had forgotten about and absolutely love. Then we have a really cool spelling of Katie. Then Caitlin. Caitlin again with a Y. Then we have Catriona, another fun to say name. Calanthe. Then Kale. I think it's Kaylee, but it could be Callie. Yeah, I think it is Callie, actually, now that I said it. Then Calla, which was already on my list, but it's also on Raquel's recent list. Then we have Callahan, as mentioned before. Then another Callie. Another Callie. And then Calliope or Calliope, which is also on Raquel's list and was previously on mine. Then we have Callaway, which I think is a really pretty name. Calpurnia. I had forgotten about this name quite a bit, and I really like it. I've been seeing it a little bit on Nameberry, but not all that recently, actually. Then we have Chimera, Cambria, Cambry, Camella, which is a pretty name. I can't talk tonight. Cammy, Camila, Camille, then Camila and Camille with 2 L's. Both names grew on me to the point where I added them only recently, like a few months ago. Then we have Cammy, Cameron, feminine version of Cameron, Candace, both with an A and with an I. I tend to prefer it with an I. I really like that spelling. Then we have Capri, Caprice, Cara, which is now my number 2 name. Then we have a really cool spelling of Kerrigan, and then Carolyn. And this spelling of Karen is the most recent one that I have added to my list. I really like it. Then we have Carrie, which was previously my favorite spelling of Carrie, but Carrie, as in Carrie Underwood, is now my favorite spelling. Then we have Carolyn, which is I think is really cool. And then another Carrie, and then Karis, which I think this is a really cool version of Karis. I completely forgot that I added this spelling, and I really like it. The more that I see it. Then we have Karen with an I, which I guess could also be Karen. Then we have Karina, Carissa, Carla, which the more I see the name, the more I really, really like it. I've always liked it, but it's still growing on me. Then we have Carly with an I, Carlina, the more common spelling for Carly. Then a really interesting name, Carlistra. Definitely unusual, but I still really like it. Then we have Carmela, which is a pretty name. Carmen, which I have always liked. Then we have Carney, Caro, Carol, and then Carolan. Carol with an E. I tend to prefer Carol with an E more than what some might consider the more common spelling of Carol. And then we have Carolyn with an I. Then Carolina, Caroline, which is now my number 1 name on my list. Carolyn, the more common spelling. And then a really interesting spelling of Caroline. It's Carolyn with a silent E, but I still say it's Caroline. And then my favorite spelling of Carrie. And then another cool version of Kerrigan. Then we have Karen or Karin. Then Carrington. I really like Carrington. I've seen it come out quite a bit more in the past maybe month, and I just really like the name Carrington. I've seen it more as a last name, but I still really like it. Carol with 2 R's and 2 L's, just like the boys' version of Carol that I had on my boys' list. Then Karen with a Y. Then my favorite spelling of Karis. Then we have Casey, the more common version of Casey, and then another interesting spelling of Casey. Then Cass which is a nice nickname for Cassandra or Cassandra. Then we have Cassidy, Cassia. I guess it could also be Cassia. I go back and forth between the pronunciation of this name. I guess tonight it's Cassia, but sometimes I say Cassia. Then we have Cassidy. I've always liked Cassidy. And then we have Cassie, which is the nickname for my friend Cassandra. Then we have what I used to say as Cassiopeia, but could also be said as Cassiopeia, or what is now my favorite pronunciation of the name that I recently heard, Cassiopeia. I really like how that sounds. Then we have Catalea, the name that I had recently added to my list that I really, really like. Then Catalin, Catalina, as in the Mac operating system software. Kate, with a C, which is pretty cool. Katarina, with an E. No, this is the first Katarina I think we have on the list. Then Catherine, with an A. Cather, which is actually, now that I think about it, not a bad nickname for Catherine. Next is my preferred spelling of Catherine, and then another interesting spelling of it. Then Kathy, with an I. Kathleen with a C. I really like that a lot more than Kathleen with a K. Then we have Kathleen, which is a nice one. Catherine with an R. Excuse my hiccups. And then Catherine, sort of a streamlined spelling of the name. Kathy with a Y, of course. And then Katie with a C. Catriona, I think, is a really fun name to say and really pretty. Katrina. And then Katya or Katya. I tend to say Katya for this particular spelling, but I can definitely see it as Katya. Then we have Kayla with a C. Kaylee with a C. Despite the other Kaylee spellings that we already saw. Then we have Cecilia, which I only recently added. It had to grow on me, but I really like it. Then we have Celestia, Selena with a C, Celine, Shana or Shana, then Chandra, Chandrika, which I really like. It's fun and pretty. Then Chantal, which I prefer over Chantal, but Chantal is really pretty too. Karis, this is my second favorite spelling of Karis. I did prefer this spelling for a while, but Karis, Carys, has grown on me more. Then we have Charlotte, which I guess could also be Charlotte. Then we have Charlotte, the more common spelling. Then Charmaine, which I think is a really cool name. Shell, which is pretty cool. This particular spelling with the E at the end. Two spellings of Chelsea, which I like. I tend to prefer Chelsea with an A, even though I prefer Kelsey with a Y. So I thought that was interesting. Then we have Cheryl, two spellings of that. Then Chevalani, which is really pretty. I wrote Chevalani. Then Cheyenne. I don't know which of those two I'd prefer. I like them both. And then we have Sierra or Ciara. Chloe. Well, I guess it could also be Kiara or Kiara. Then after Chloe is Christabel. And then Crystal. This is a really interesting spelling of Crystal. And then Christiane, which is pretty cool. Then Christy. Crystal with an H and a Y. I have a friend named Crystal with this spelling. Then we have Ciandra, which is really cool. Then I say this as Sierra, but I have found out that most people say Kira. I prefer Sierra, but I do like Kiera. Not so much Kira, but I prefer it pronounced like the artist's name. Then we have Sierra with a C rather than an S. So kind of a combination between the spelling that I just mentioned and Sierra, which is now my preferred spelling, Sierra. Then we have Sierra, which is a nice variant of that. And then here we go, Claire, then Clara, then Clarabella. Clarabelle. Clarabelle is one of my favorite Claire variants, and Claradel, which is really cool. Then Claire without the I. Clarice, Clarissa, and Clarita for my Claire variants. Claire and Clara being my favorites. Then we have Claire. I prefer Claire with an I. There was a time when I preferred Claire without the I, but I do like it with the I more now. Then we have Claudette, Clementine, which took me a little bit to add, but I do really like it. It's really pretty. Clover, Clyde, which is a nice Clyde variant for a girl. Colette, Colleen, Connie, Cora, which I really like. I didn't really like it when I first started collecting names, but it's grown on me enough to the point that I really like it now. And then Coralie, Coraline has a nice alternative to Caroline. That name is still growing on me, but I still really like it. Then Cordelia, which I first heard on Anne with an E, just like I first heard Delphine from Raquel's List on Anne with an E. Then we have Corey, more feminized spelling of Corey. Corin, this is my preferred spelling. I really like this particular spelling of Corin. Then we have Corliss, then Corin with two R's, and then Corey, just like the more uncommon boys spelling, but I still really like it for a girl. Corin with a Y, then Cosette, Courtney, both with an E and with a Y, Koya, which is another fun to say name, Christella or Christella. I would imagine that it's probably Christella. And then Crystal, the more common spelling. Then Crystal with two L's. Christian with a Y and two N's. I prefer the spelling of the two. Then we have Sylvan, Kimbry. This is the name. Once I saw this name going over my list, that's when I decided to add Kimberly. Because I thought about it then, and that's when I added it. And then we have Cindy, as in Cyndi Lauper, and Cynthia. Hope you enjoyed my C names list, and I've seen this on 2 videos, so I'm going to do this myself. In this video, here are 2 questions for you guys. First of all, what are your favorite names of my C list? And what are your favorite C names? C is one of my favorite letters for, as you can probably tell with my long list, for especially girls' names. And I just really have always liked names starting with this letter. So I would love to know what your favorite C names are. And with that, thank you for watching. And I look forward to my next video. Hope you enjoyed.